In the spring of 1943, a Japanese flight instructor at Kasumigaura Air Base stood before a classroom of newly qualified Zero pilots and removed a diagram he had taught for 4 years. The rolling scissors defense, the maneuver that had made Japanese naval aviation the most feared air force in the Pacific. He removed it because teaching it had become, in his own recorded words, an act of sending men to die on purpose. What happened to a kill technique that had beaten every opponent it ever faced? It's December 1941, somewhere over the Philippines. An American F-4F Wildcat pilot spots a Zero and dives on it from above. Textbook attack, everything by the manual. The Zero pilot doesn't run. He turns directly into the dive, tight and fast, forcing the Wildcat to overshoot. The American blows past him. Now, the Zero is behind. Firing solution locked in under 8 seconds. The Wildcat is gone. That wasn't luck. That was a curriculum. The Zero's ability to execute that reversal came from a deliberate design decision that bordered on ruthless. Mitsubishi's engineers stripped out the pilot's armor plating, stripped out the self-sealing fuel tanks, saved every pound they could find, and the result was an aircraft with a turning radius so tight that no American, British, or Dutch fighter of 1941 could stay with it in a sustained turning engagement at low or medium altitude. The maneuver the curriculum was built on, turn into the attacker, force the overshoot, get behind him, required that turning advantage to work. Without the weight savings, there is no scissors. The aircraft and the doctrine were the same thing. Japanese flight instructors had spent the entire 1930s building a training system around this single edge. The rolling scissors wasn't a trick. It was the core of the curriculum, precise, demanding, requiring hundreds of hours before a pilot could execute it under pressure. The pilots who had it were among the most skilled aviators in the world, and the results proved it. Japanese pilots, returning from the opening months of the Pacific Campaign, reported kill ratios their own instructors had not projected, even in optimistic pre-war planning. The maneuver worked against the Wildcat. It worked against the British Hurricane. It worked against the Dutch Brewster Buffalo so completely, it barely qualified as a contest. That's the problem with a method that wins this convincingly. The flight training system didn't question the curriculum, it doubled down on it. When every engagement confirms your doctrine, you don't redesign the doctrine. You deepen it, you refine it, you teach it harder. That institutional reflex, the one that treats overwhelming success as permanent proof, is exactly what locked the Kasumigaura instructor into a system that could no longer adapt when the kill ratios reversed. The Japanese flight training system doubled down on the rolling scissors because it worked until it didn't. Would you have kept teaching the same curriculum or scrapped it the moment the kill ratios reversed? Drop your answer in the comments below. Because the American who figured out how to break it had been studying the Zero long before he ever faced one in combat. 6 months after Midway, John Thach walked into a Navy briefing room with something more valuable than a kill. He had a solution. Thach had studied the Zero from intelligence reports before he ever saw one in the air. When he finally faced it over Midway in June of 1942, he wasn't surprised by what it could do. He was ready for it. What he brought back wasn't a story about surviving. It was a tested tactical answer to the rolling scissors, and he presented it to Navy leadership with the urgency of a man who understood that what he had learned was the difference between winning and losing the air war. The mechanic was precise. 2 aircraft fly together. When a Zero locks onto one American pilot, that pilot turns toward his wingman. The Zero follows. Now it's flying directly into the guns of the second aircraft. The tactic didn't require any American pilot to outturn the Zero. It required two American pilots to work together in a way the Zero's doctrine of individual aerial combat had no answer for. The Navy adopted it immediately and built it into the training curriculum. The Rolling Scissors had always assumed a one-on-one engagement. The THAC weave made that assumption fatal. But the tactic was only half the trap. The other half was altitude. Japanese doctrine had been built and tested almost entirely below 15,000 feet, where the Zero's advantages were real and decisive. Above that ceiling, the picture changed. The F-6F Hellcat, arriving in Pacific combat in September of 1943, was faster than the Zero above 15,000 feet, climbed faster above 10,000 feet, and could dive at speeds the Zero's airframe couldn't safely match without risking structural failure. An American pilot who held altitude above the engagement ceiling. Japanese doctrine was designed for, could dictate every term of every fight, dive, fire a burst, and zoom climb back to altitude before a Japanese pilot could complete the rolling reversal the curriculum had trained him to execute. By the time the Scissors finished, the Hellcat was already gone, 500 feet above and climbing. The instructor at Kasumagaura knew all of this. He had removed the diagram. But the replacement curriculum, one built around altitude, speed, and mutual defense, required aircraft Japan did not have, and training time Japan had already spent on the wrong doctrine. That's what made his position impossible. He hadn't failed to see the problem. He had seen it completely, and it didn't matter. The maneuver that beat the Zero wasn't a secret. It was a trap the Japanese flight training system had locked itself into building, one victory at a time, until the door closed behind it. Subscribe here to World Wars Files if you want more videos like this, and watch this one next.